So what has been your personal view regarding healthcare response to COVID-19, and how do you think change the way organizations and institutions like yours actively engage?
Right. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And we all are really observing that in real time. So, as you mentioned, the development and deployment of vaccines usually take years. And so, I can give you examples from many years, and it used to take 20 to 30 years between the development and registration or approval of vaccines in developed countries like here in the United States, and when it gets to developing countries in Africa, and when it actually gets to the poor. And then a specific case in point is with the Merck HPV vaccine that was approved by US FDA 2006. It took only until about 2011 and 2015 for Kenya and Uganda to begin to roll out HPV vaccine in their countries. But what you can see is actually that what I call drug lag has been reducing over time. And generally, drug lag and access to medicines, one of the major shots in the arm to enable that to reduce was with HIV/AIDS epidemic. Of course, millions died between access in the US and in Africa, but eventually quickened the process. I tell you that nothing has been as dramatic as the current COVID-19 pandemic, and most importantly, the COVID-19 vaccine. So we are going to see for the very first time, literally real-time access between mature markets and developing countries. And even though I do not know for sure when it's going to be available in countries in Africa, but what I do know is that the infrastructure are in place to quicken that process. And those infrastructure includes the ACT accelerator, which I'm sure you may be familiar with, the COVAX facility, includes even that commitment from the COVAX facility to be a pool procurement and advanced marketing commitment facility to ensure that vaccines that are actually successful vaccines that are authorized are able to be bought and distributed to these countries. But I think, irrespective of the time it takes for this product to get to Africa and to the developing countries, one thing that is a prerequisite is that vaccine has to be safe, it has to be effective, and it has to be quality assured. And so there is no better way of saying it but to say that the rollout and uptake of effective and quality assured vaccines will require enhanced regulatory capacity. And they require need to upgrade infrastructure for cold chain and for distribution. This is a vaccine, the very first set of vaccines, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which now is being authorized in 4 countries, in Canada, in the UK first, in Canada, here in the US just last week, and in Bahrain. The infrastructure that is needed for that is ultra low temperature infrastructure. So there is a need to strengthen that infrastructure. So in its totality, there's a need to strengthen regulatory capacity. There's a need to strengthen regulatory preparedness, which goes just beyond just capacity for emergency use authorization, but goes into capacity for lot release, quality surveillance, safety surveillance. And then when you have all that set up, it will be good that countries in Africa and in fact in low and middle income countries use this as a golden opportunity to now build sustainable systems that will outlast COVID-19. I want to really emphasize that is very key. We don't have to wait until another pandemic or epidemic to begin to react, right? We have to build sustainable capacity. And that sustainable capacity may include having vaccine delivery, vaccine approval and delivery capacity that will help these countries to graduate from Gavi, which is another thing that was imminent before COVID-19.
One of the things that I'm always concerned about, actually looking at the regulatory issue concerning this COVID-19 testing, the vaccine, is that do you think the world or the regulatory ecosystem would ever go back to the period where it usually takes up to like 2 years to grant this regulatory approval, considering the speed at which COVID-19 vaccine has taken. Do you think there is a justification for this rapid process? And do you think it is realistic for every other vaccine or intervention to enjoy this kind of rapid development and approval?
I will certainly hope so. I'll certainly hope so because every life matter, and part of our mission at USP is in working in medicine quality is to ensure that people all over the world have enjoy access to quality assured medical products or quality assured medicines. And so, but it is beyond just wishing it. There are a lot of things that need to be in place for you to begin to shorten the time lag, or the what I call drag lag, between innovative products getting to the market and when they're available to low and middle income countries. Some of the factors and variables issues that are related to this are beyond the scope of what we do here at United States Pharmacopeia, but a host of them are very critical and relevant to the work we do. For instance, the regulatory issue you mentioned. So what has been the situation is, all things being equal, with affordability and others, the regulatory agencies in low and middle income countries have been lacking the capacity to be able to review and approve innovative medical products, even when the application, what we call dossier, are submitted to those countries. And so several initiatives are being put in place to overcome that. And some of them include, how do you, similar to what you do in procurement, how do you pool expertise? Because at times you have to do with expertise, not really having the right expertise coming together to look at those products, right? How do you work share? So usually I try to create a sort of a pyramid that starts off first with opportunity for work sharing and pooling of expertise. And then you go to another layer, which is opportunity for reliance, where you begin to rely on decisions of other much more resourced agencies, right? They could be here, United States Food and Drug Administration, it could be European EMA, it could be Health Canada, wherever, right? That's what we call reliance. But you still have the jurisdiction to take your decision, right? And the top of the pyramid is what we call recognition, right? At times it's mutual recognition when when the other country is recognizing your decision as well. But basically what recognition is that the decision another agency has taken, you are taking it and actually implementing that decision as it is, right? So it has to first start with building capacity at the base of that pyramid, building capacity for work sharing, building capacity for competency. And that is what most of your regions are doing in Africa through the regional economic harmonization, medicine regulatory harmonization initiatives, right? So they're coming together as regulatory authorities, that are discussing, they are utilizing skill set they have across agencies to review these innovative products, at times with oversight from organizations like us, as well as with WHO. Right, and then they are beginning to build infrastructure for reliance, right, amongst the regulatory authorities in ECOWAS, amongst regulatory authorities in SADC, in EAC, right, in East Africa, in IGAD. So that's a good thing, and maybe ultimately we're going to see someday recognition, right? But ever which way, we are hoping that that drug lag, that this is a wake-up call for us to say, so far as there's a high burden of that disease in Africa, we have to get to the point where delay in availing those people of those products should be overcome and timely access is guaranteed. And like I said again, regulatory capacity, capacity to monitor safety, and capacity to monitor and safeguard the population from substandard and falsified medicine are two important things, but in no way are they the only things that you need to ensure timely access happens.
Now, is it possible for African countries to quickly deal with these problems in line and be ready to effectively authorize or regulate the vaccine as soon as possible? Is there a way they can quickly do this?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that some of that is already ongoing. There is several continental technical working groups and initiatives that are already going on in Africa along those lines. An example I would like to cite is the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, AVAREF. So AVAREF is an EU NIPAD working group, technical group, that is working in generally to ensure capacity for regulation of clinical trials and approval of new medicines in the continent. AVAREF was very, very instrumental to the speed that you saw with the timely approval of Ebola vaccine barely 90 days after WHO pre-qualified it. And so there are 4 countries in Africa that achieved that, including Ghana, DRC, and I've forgotten the other 2. And so the work of AVAREP is currently being coordinated, as I understand it, through the WHO Afro office in Brazzaville. And there are some donors, which I think includes Gates Foundation, that are contributing to supporting AVAREF. Here at United States Pharmacopeia, we are working closely with AVAREF. We've had about 2 meetings with them between our center, couple of us, including our vice president for global vaccines here at USP. And some of those discussions are to ensure that organizations, technical working groups and organizations focusing on things like this in the continent understand the resources that USP have and how USP can help them in quality assurance of these COVID-19 vaccines when they are ultimately available. It will also be very important to mention the work of the African CDC, which is making a lot of effort to pull stakeholders and donors together to build off on what COVAX vaccine is putting in place, and as well as to address some of the issues about timely access to COVID-19 vaccine. But again, we are there as United States Pharmacopeia to build on some of the capacities that we helped establish in Africa in terms of regulatory competency. We've worked with more than 50 regulators in low and middle income countries, more than 50 low and middle income country regulators. Majority of these are in Africa. And some of our previous work had to do with capacity for them to review and move products to either availability in their country or to reject them if they're not meeting quality specifications and safety as well. We are very unfortunate a little bit here that most of those countries do not have a formal process for granting emergency use authorization. It is something that requires a formal process. Applicants need to understand, what do you expect them to file, right? That could include the chemistry, manufacturing, and control part of the dossier. That include an explanation of the manufacturing process for that vaccine. So some of the countries in Africa, say, hey, for emergency, we have a way to grant you waiver. We have a way to quickly look at the product, to look at the dossier you have, but it's not formalized. So there are no formal guidelines for emergency use authorization. Countries may be working with USP and others to develop that formal process, because that will lead to transparency. That will lead to belief in the vaccines that will eventually be made available to the population. And Paul, one other thing I wanted to mention as well is the manufacturing. So manufacturing is a huge part of this. We're really headed towards sustainable access to COVID-19 and maybe EPI vaccines. Then there is a need to build infrastructure for what I call last mile manufacturing as timely as possible. And this may just be capacity for fill and finish and distribution of vaccines. So Africa has the opportunity to build on the fledgling infrastructure that was built previously in countries like South Africa, Senegal. Senegal is one country that has a WHO pre-qualified vaccine. Yellow fever vaccine from Senegal is WHO pre-qualified. So South Africa There's fledgling vaccine manufacturing capacity in Kenya, of course, Indonesia, right, and then Nigeria. So it's just getting there. So there's a need to build that capacity, at least in the moment, to help in packaging that vaccine and distributing it.
So I have my next question is in two parts. The first part is that even before the COVID vaccines were approved, there were already calls by the WHO and several organizations that nationalism should not be allowed to disenfranchise other citizens of the world from accessing the COVID-19 vaccine. But as it has been playing out, almost every available dose of the vaccine has been bought up by rich countries. And what do you think could have been done from a regulatory perspective to prevent this? Then the second question is a way of getting other countries to be able to access this vaccine is to free up the IP and enable the local manufacturing of this vaccine in countries like countries like South Africa and Senegal that you mentioned, that they already have that capability to manufacture vaccines. So what do you think about this call? Do you see these multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industries freeing up these IPs to enable countries that are unable to presently pay to locally manufacture these vaccines?
Well, yeah, even though that's a very good question, Paul, it's a little bit beyond my scope, and definitely what we have control on within USP. There are several other organizations that focus on these issues a lot. But again, I would like to reiterate that for timely access, even when you put away the IP issues, the timely access to COVID-19 vaccine as well as other innovative medical products, there is a need. It is in the best interest of the continent to begin to build up its manufacturing capacity and infrastructure. And what that means is that you could actually, at that point, utilize opportunities for technology transfer, joint ventures, and these are things, particularly technology transfer. This is a role that USP plays. So we have participated in one or two efforts. An example is with chlorhexidine gel, where the developer GSK was very interested in having us be a knowledge broker to enable manufacturers, particularly African manufacturers that want to manufacture the product according to international quality standards, to learn that know-how and that. And so, we are seeing increasingly that there are instances where the originator is interested in engaging in some form of licensure, or they licensee their product to manufacturers in low and middle income countries. So we saw that with COVID-19 therapeutic, one of the therapeutic that is believed to be helpful, and that is remdesivir, where Gilead has licensed the product to about 9 other manufacturers in low and middle income countries, including Pakistan. We've seen that in several other products before that. So African manufacturers need to build that capacity, because with that, there may be opportunity for joint venture, there may be opportunity for technology transfer, and that is where organizations like USP can help them to make that happen.
So, in other words, who do you think has the capability to accelerate African countries' access to this vaccine? And what do you recommend should be done to quickly get that done?
Yeah, again, I would say what I recommend is, one, regulatory preparedness, right? One, readiness, building up manufacturing infrastructure. We have to be ready even before the products are hitting covers. Like I tried at the beginning, I tried to describe the global infrastructure that actually, for me, seems the most realistic pathway for Africa countries to get the vaccine. So through the COVAX facility, and from the COVAX facility, because that is led by Gavi, the vaccines may go to UNICEF. And from UNICEF as a procurement and distribution agency will be able now to get it to the continent. That's what I imagine will happen. But that will require that the infrastructure for approval, right, whether it's authorization or to grant a waiver, that infrastructure needs to be in place. And then the infrastructure for safeguarding your market from substandard and falsified products need to be in place. We're already getting reports that from Interpol and others that are warning that bad actors will take advantage of the effort of the desire by people to get access to this vaccine. So regulatory authorities need to strengthen their post-marketing surveillance capability, right? National vaccine and immunization programs need to strengthen their capacity for the distribution of vaccines, including their cold chain capability. It's going to be different. It's like nothing they've done previously. This is the very first time the effort is to vaccinate a huge, if not all, members of the population, an entire country, right? Starting first, of course, with a cohort that will need the vaccine first, right? But then, the expanded program on immunization and immunization programs have never confronted with a thing like this. So there's a need for countries to get ready. Readiness is there, and there are a set of factors and things that global agencies have asked countries to be doing for that readiness. Then by the time the vaccines are available, I think that between COVAX facility, between Africa CDC, between several other discussions that are going on globally to ensure equitable access in low-middle income country, I think it wouldn't take time before countries in Africa will have access.
I think you mentioned aspects of two issues that I want to really talk about. The first one is that what is your opinion? What is your view on the proposal by South Africa and India, that waiver proposal that they sent to the World Trade Organization? Then the second one is on this issue of fake vaccines. I don't think nobody was expecting that we are going to have this particular issue, considering the names of the vaccines that the world is considering open secrets. There is the one from Pfizer. So we already know these vaccines that we are talking about here. So which vacuum do you still think those that want to dupe the system with fake products would maximize? And the other question, what is the official comment regarding the proposal by South Africa and India, waiver proposal to the World Trade Organization?
There is a great threat here for one of the greatest instruments to address vaccine hesitancy, and will be to build trust in the quality of the vaccine that is deployed. When you have vaccines that do not do not go through the approved cold chain, that gets into a temperature excursion, for instance, and get denatured, and they cannot work, what happens is, and they get denatured, then that vaccine may not work, right? And what happens? The person that is vaccinated may still end up getting the virus, right? And that will contribute to diminishing the trust in the vaccine. So I cannot stress this enough, that for trust in COVID-19 vaccine, we need two major things. We need safety and we need quality surveillance, robust safety and quality surveillance. So I will urge countries in the continent to build up their infrastructure for post-approval safety and quality surveillance. It's very, very important. And I won't begin here to unpack what that means in reality, but some of the things that we've taught countries already, or technical assistance we provided countries already, will help them begin to put together what an ideal safety and quality surveillance infrastructure may look like. And lastly, again, to your question about India, South Africa, and WTO, it's really beyond my scope to opine on that. But again, countries should get ready with what they can do for themselves right now, which is regulatory preparedness, quality, safety and quality surveillance capability, and then capability extensively to distribute a successful COVID-19 vaccine.
What lesson have you learned in 2020 and that you think the organization is going to influence the way the organization carries out its functions? And what should we expect from USP, particularly your section in the incoming years?
Yeah, I think a lot have changed with COVID-19 has literally changed everything. So we're paying more and more attention. This is not an official USP position, but I will tell you that there is a great deal of effort here at USP to support vaccine developers, to provide tools that can support vaccine developers. There are efforts to support the 4 pillars of the Arts Accelerator. In other words, diagnostics, vaccines, therapeutics, and health system strengthening, right? And really to map our minds around what needs to be done to facilitate timely deployment of innovative medicines that are needed, particularly when they are the great burden to middle-income countries. And so they may be small molecules, simple small molecule medicines, but they may be biologics, biosimilars, and they may be vaccines. And so I think there's a greater awakening that our work doesn't just end with very literally old products that have been used for years in the US and other places. And then we eventually get to low-income country in about 10, 15 years. Beginning to realize, I for one, is beginning to realize the need that we think through what it is that we can do within the space of regulatory, manufacturing, quality surveillance. What is it that we can do to support these countries when they are deploying those products?